The session that I have for you today is a survey of remote automotive attack services with Charlie Miller and Chris Valsek.
Oh. That's Valsek, actually. You got one job, and that's what you do.
By round of applause. How's everyone doing? Good? Good? All right, all right. This, as you probably know, is Dr. Charlie Miller. He is the one protecting all your DMs and tweets, so, you know, Charlie's doing the Lord's work.
And occasionally reading them.
Occasionally read them. I'm Chris Valsek. I am now the Director of Vehicle Security Research at IOActive, so I get to spend all my time now looking at cars, which is cool.
Hey, let's talk about why we did this song.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say it, actually.
Go ahead.
So last year, you know, our talk got rejected at Black Hat, and so the first thing I started thinking, like, what would the Black Hat people like? I was like, let's see if we can remotely attack a car. And so, unlike the previous year when we just naively randomly bought cars, it's like, maybe we should do some research into which car we should buy.
Yeah, when we originally bought the Ford and the Toyota, we were like, yeah, let's get cars and we'll hack them. And we assumed there would be stuff. But we learned from that process that you should probably, I don't know, do a bit of research about the features, the network topology, you know, the remote entry points. The vehicle before saying blowing, you know, $80,000 for cars. You might want to.
Our two criteria last time were, does it auto park and is it as cheap as possible? So those were our two criteria. So now, and then this time we started doing some actual research before we wanted to buy new cars. And at some point we were like, you know, maybe people would be interested in this. And that's what this talk is all about.
So this is all high-level stuff that we got really from mechanics accounts of the auto manufacturers. We wanted to look at how these things are set up, what features they had, what way they could be remote attackable, and then just really kind of document it all for everyone so they could see the process that you would go through before you would even start actually researching on a car. This is kind of what you would do. And it also gave us a more broad scope. You know, before we knew a lot about two cars and people would say like, hey, could you hack this car or that car? And we'd just have to say, I don't know, because we never looked at any other manufacturers other than Ford and Toyota.
Right, and every car is basically different. And so we wanted to kind of get an idea, because we got so many questions about different cars, like, did we pick the two easiest to hack cars, the two hardest to hack cars? You know, we didn't know. And so we wanted to get more of a broad look at, you know, what's out there, what kind of cars have different security systems and all that kind of stuff. So
we realize this is a big problem too. You know, as Charlie and I said before, you pop my computer, now go ahead, you pop our phones, cool, you steal our credit card numbers, our data, even dump our email spool. That's kind of recoverable, right? You can come back from that.
I'm never going to recover if someone dumps my email spool.
Exactly. But your DMs, no one wants to look at those. But a car, on the other hand, right, if someone attacks it, and it's not going to be opportunistic, it's going to have to be something that's a lot of research, time, and money, but if it happens, it can result in physical harm, where popping my phone, in all reality, not the case. So now you know why we're doing this.
Go back. Oh. I've spent a lot of time on this slide. So another reason is that you see a lot of things in the newspaper or the press about car hacking, and some of it's actually about our stuff, and most of it is not actually super accurate. And we wanted to kind of say, like, what would a real remote attack look like? It's not this, like, you know, I'm in. Yeah. It's like, what steps would a remote attacker have to go through? What technical hurdles would they have to overcome, and do these differ for different cars? And that's a lot of what this talk is about.
And instead of just, you know, blatantly saying like, oh yeah, I'd attack this wireless thing and hack the car, but like, well, that might not be possible for a certain vehicle, right? It just depends on how each car is made. They're all different, and we wanted to look at more of them to kind of make more general statements about them as well.
Right. So by the end of this talk, hopefully you'll know at least how a remote attack would have to work against your car, and you'll know also some things about how manufacturers or even yourself could try to defend against that. No remote shells.
No remote shells, sorry.
So if you want to leave, like, this is your one moment when I'm not going to razz you.
Andrew, we'll see you, buddy.
Later, Cushman.
Thanks for coming.
Come back 5 minutes to go in the talk. There's a good final 5 minutes.
Oh yeah, Charlie has something special at the end, so do stay to the end. So he does drop something. We hired our friends at Pixar to create this animation for us here. It describes how a remote attack would work. You have a silhouette bad guy with computer. He makes some kind of wireless communication, finds a vulnerability, right? I mean, cars aren't natively right now remote controllable. You're going to find a vulnerability in some kind of wireless entry point. take that ECU over, and from taking that ECU over, maybe you can send messages out in the network that get to the brakes. Maybe there's some kind of gateway that actually passes messages back and forth to different portions of the car. You don't know until you look at the car.
Maybe it's completely impossible. Maybe the Bluetooth ECU is completely segregated from like the brakes, for example.
Exactly.
Maybe it's totally impossible.
You don't know unless you look at the actual vehicle, right? From there, you attack the brakes, and the next step, logical step, is smash.
Frowny
Car goes
face.
boom.
So, and even that step isn't for sure,
Yeah.
right? So maybe the Bluetooth stack can send whatever message it wants to the brakes, but there's no message that tells the brakes lock up.
Yeah.
And so there's each of these 3 steps are completely, different and for different cars. They're each hard in their own way, maybe.
Yeah, it just all depends. They're all so different.
Right. So step 1, remote code execution on an ECU. Step 2, sending messages from the remote ECU to the cyber-physical ECU. And step 3 is getting that ECU to do something like lock up the brakes, turn the steering wheel, or whatever.
Exactly. Well, all cars, usually these days have a steering angle sensor, right, to see what angle. They don't have the mechanisms to actually have a computer turn the wheel, right? Only
Right.
cars really that have self-parking or maybe drive-by-wire systems have that ability. So it's not always guaranteed. It just depends at this point. This has happened before. Everyone talks about remote attacks theoretically. The researchers from the University of Washington and the University of California, San Diego. Carl, if you're here, what's up? Where you at? All right, not here. Sweet. They actually attacked. This is as loud as it goes. Attacked the car remotely, right, through telematics and Bluetooth, so cellular and Bluetooth. We're able to compromise an ECU, actually go through a gateway, reprogram a gateway.
They didn't have to do that.
Oh, okay. They had the ability to, I should say. And then send a diagnostic message. I believe it's a routine control or device control from GM 3110, that's standard. Diagnostic thing, and lock up the brakes, right? So this is not
that was
theoretical.
all 3 steps right there.
Yeah.
Remote, vulnerability that they exploited, sending messages to the brakes, and then getting the brakes to lock up.
Yeah. Now, we did something a bit different, right? We wrecked a reporter from Fox News, but we were plugged in. What we did, instead of doing kind of diagnostic commands for this portion of the attack, we took a feature of the vehicle, the ability to park itself, right? And it sent messages when it was parking itself to do steering angle and things like that. So what we did is trick the car into thinking it was going in reverse, that it was going really slow, and that it was auto-parking itself, and that the angle of the wheel was not at where it should be, right? So we smashed this guy into a hillside right on the river in Pittsburgh. We scared the daylights out of the cameraman who was in the front seat backwards. He definitely went home and hugged his wife and kids that day, and generally, wrecked this guy. While we were plugged in, this capability for this Prius, as we later found out in this research, would be you'd be capable of doing this remotely because the way the cyber-physical attributes work and the network architecture is set up.
So of the 3 steps of the attack, remote compromise, sending messages, getting the thing to do something, we only focused on step 3 last year. And that's what that video was. So we didn't worry about remote compromise. We didn't worry about, the getting a message through the network. We just plugged straight into the car and saw whether you could control things like brakes and steering.
Because we didn't know when we got the cars if we'd be able to control anything, right?
Right. You want to see something funny about this video? Can we play it again? I don't know how to. All right, so watch. He takes his hands off the wheel like an idiot. He's like, hey, I heard you can control the steering. I'm like, put your hands on the wheel. And it's like, we crashed.
And I was just back there setting up the exploit, and I didn't know his hands were off the wheel.
Yeah, with the sound, you can actually hear me say, put your hands on the wheel.
Yeah.
And then we crashed.
Immediately smash.
Yep. So,
anyway. As we talked, there's kind of these 3 pieces to these attacks, right? And you kind of have to take them all into consideration. Many times you'll see diagrams with cars that have features. From our perspective, these are targets, attack surface, right? So there's a bunch of things that you can look at and do.
Right. So the way that, and you've probably seen some press about this before our talk about this car is the most hackable. And so what we mean by that is we're looking at those 3 steps we talked about and trying to measure how, before we even look at the car, because we didn't go out and buy 20 cars because we're rich, but we're not that rich. So we just used the public information to try to determine how hard we thought those 3 steps would be for each car. So since we can't determine how many vulnerabilities a Bluetooth stack has without actually auditing it, what we did instead to see how hard the remote attack part was we just saw how big is the attack surface, right? So maybe a car doesn't even have a Bluetooth stack. Well, then it's certainly safe.
Yeah.
But maybe it has Bluetooth stack. It's on the internet. It has an app store. It has all this
Cellular
other stuff.
communications,
Right.
right?
So if it just piles on, so we said, well, we don't know which one for sure is going to have vulnerabilities, but we know that the one with the huge attack surface is probably going to be easier to hack than one with a small one.
I mean, it's the same thing everyone does for software, right? There's a reason you don't see people writing exploits a lot in the public for Chrome, because there's a lot of steps involved and it's a lot harder. You have something that's more of a soft target and a lot more features. It's the same thing with cars. That's just really what we're trying to convey with this presentation and the subsequent paper, that we didn't actually go look at these cars, but just from our professional opinion that if I were to look at one of these might be more professional. They might be easier to go about assessing.
Right. So we measured for our hackability numbers, how big was the remote attack surface? That was step 1. And then for skipping ahead to step 3, what sort of cyber physical features did it have? So, is it a 1980, Chevy?
1969 Granada, not going to have too many cyber physical features on it, right?
Right. But
cool ride, but not many cyber physical features.
Right, but does it have like adaptive cruise control, which means there's a computer that controls acceleration and braking? Does it have lane keep assist, which is something that controls the steering wheel? So then we figured out how many of those type things it had. And just like the academic researchers in that video we just showed, they didn't need that. Those brakes didn't have any like cool features. It's just it had a vulnerability. So you don't need to have those features, but those features make it easier to attack.
And we know because we use those features in our previous research to actually control the car. So it's not completely speculative. We do know from experience.
Right. And then for the second step, we just saw, could the ECUs that have the remote endpoints talk to the ECUs that control things like the brakes?
Yeah. And that's basically what that diagram shows. We wanted to talk about the remote attack surface. Obviously, we can't list every single thing from every single car, but we made some generalities, and we used the Ford Escape and the Toyota Prius as examples because we physically looked at those before. So, it varies in length how near or far you have to be to communicate, but we'll kind of go through the ones that we know about.
So yeah, most cars will have basically most or all of these features. So this first one, these pictures are from the Ford Escape that I tore apart. So on the left you have the instrument cluster, like with the speedometer and stuff. On the right is a little thing that goes around where you put your key in the car. And it's a little radio antenna that reads some data from your key to make sure that it's the right key. Otherwise, you can't turn the car on.
And the range of this is what, a couple millimeters. So while it does have attack surface, obviously it's not that great. It's very short range, and there's very little
It's
data.
short range, and there's almost no data exchange. So like you could attack this. Like it's hard to imagine this would actually happen. So we're mentioning this. Someday maybe someone will do it. Like this is not the first thing I would try to attack. TPMS. So this is the tire pressure monitoring system. So there's little sensors like on your tires, and they communicate with radio waves over to a little receiver. Here in the Ford, it's in something called the Smart Junction Box. The foldings on the left. On the right is the board, and if you look at a paper we wrote a little bit ago, you can actually see the chip that's used to receive the transmissions. But anyway, same sort of situation. You got to be pretty close to the car to communicate with this. And there has been researchers who have figured out the protocol and stuff.
I believe Rutgers, the guy from Rutgers, did the tire pressure monitor research, so that was cool.
But again, there's not that much data. It's not like you're exchanging HTML or images or something. It's just like tire pressure at that moment, right? So it's like 30, 30, 30 or something. So
whatever your pressure may be.
It's maybe the manufacturer screwed that up, but it's unlikely.
Yeah. A thing probably everyone here is familiar with, remote keyless entry or keyless start, right? Everyone has a clicker, they lock and unlock the doors. Works from a couple meters away. It's cool because it's usually connected to kind of integral portions of the car, especially when it comes to things like theft, because it's door unlocking and locking. What's his name? Silvio Caesar or what is doing an actual talk on where he just popped his car open using this technology. But again, there's not much data being sent. So while you may be able to open the doors or start the engine, the possibility of remote code execution is probably lower because not much data is exchanged.
So Bluetooth is one of the first ones that we mentioned so far that actually has at least some reasonable attack surface.
Yeah. I would consider this to have viable attack surface, right? Because especially after post pairing with a device, you're sending your address book, you're doing audio, you're doing data, you're doing things like album art, right? So, I mean, how many times have we seen vulnerabilities in image parsers and audio parsers, right? Like, to us, this is probably the biggest attack surface of every automobile, and it really is, I don't want to say concerning, but it is what you would go after, right? Because almost every car these days has Bluetooth.
Right, so even like the low cars have this, and the academics actually found actual vulnerability they were able to exploit remotely through this, and there's researchers who have given a talk at Codenomicon that showed, they didn't say which stacks they looked at, but different cars, they found like a ton of crashes for all their Bluetooth.
So I mean, this is viable attack surface. People have found bugs. I don't think we're writing perfect Bluetooth stacks or perfect image or audio parsers anytime soon. So I know.
So there's a smaller attack surface pre-pairing and like a very large one after pairing. There's some thought that maybe you can get by the pairing, or who knows.
Yeah. Good.
All right, so if you notice, the ranges have been getting bigger as we've been talking about the remote attack surface. That's clever planning by your presenters.
That's how you do a presentation.
Right. So Bluetooth is like, I don't know, 30 meters or something. So this one is like sent over like FM radio or whatever. And this is when you're driving along, chilling to your Kelly Clarkson. The way that your radio knows to say it's Kelly Clarkson is because not only are you getting like audio signals over the FM, you're getting this data. And so it's conceivable that the thing that's parsing this data could totally screw it up. And this would be a lot farther range than, say, Bluetooth or something.
Yeah.
Again, it's pretty small attack surface, but hey,
Attack
exploited,
surface-
that's the mess. Like it's like super small. So
at one point, if you're trying to actually, attack a car, you're going to look at every ounce of attack surface, right? And whether how big or small, because you're going to try to find the easiest way in. Maybe this is the easiest. We don't know. I think this is like the holy grail for most people, right? Telematics, so cellular. And a lot of times now, the cellular modem is the thing that makes the Wi-Fi hotspot in the car work. Also, it has the functionality for things like Mercedes Embrace, GM OnStar, Toyota Connect, ways that you communicate with the outside world. As long as you're in cellular range, this thing works. It's designed to work everywhere. So this gives you a very, very large range when trying to attack these. Again, we don't know much about it. But obviously, I think this is the most concerning right now to a lot of people.
Right. And again, this is something that the academics actually exploited remotely.
So it has been done. It's not like it's science fiction. People have done it, just not us, because we're not smart
people.
enough. I think one of the concerns that will come up in the near future are internet and in-car apps, right? Cars are having web browsers and their own apps on the infotainment systems in the cars. I think this is concerning.
Once you add a web browser to a car, like it's over.
Yeah,
like, Chris and I win.
We know for a fact we can't write secure web browsers, right? I mean, if you think you can, you're kidding yourself. And
I'm not 100% sure I can write a Bluetooth exploit, but I know damn well I can write a web browser exploit.
I've written a web browser exploit. I know how to do that.
Me too.
Awesome, high five. And that's the whole point, too. People know how to do this. There's a lot more people in this room that know how to write a web browser exploit or an Android app exploit than there is a Bluetooth exploit, I would think.
TPMS.
Yeah, or a tire pressure monitoring system, right? Unless you're Michael Osman or Dominic Spiller or Travis Goodspeed, I don't think you're writing too many of these on a day-to-day basis. But a lot of people can write a malicious app. A lot of people can pop a web browser. And if these things are on the same network as braking, steering, acceleration, that's bad times, I would think.
So this is the one that is growing. So like all cars have Bluetooth stacks, and only like the really exceptional cars have this internet sort of connectivity. But this is the one that's really growing, and this is the one that's like the scariest. I think.
Yeah, and if you see that output, that's output from Charlie Nmap scanning his car.
Yeah.
So if you
can
don't have
Nmap
encryption-
your car, like things are getting real.
Yeah. Yeah, when you can, you'll see.
Yeah, so that output was from my Jeep, and if you turn it into a Wi-Fi hotspot, and then it has a couple of listening ports.
Yeah.
One of which was IRC, but it's not actually
Yeah.
it's not actually an IRC server, unfortunately. It's something else. But
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's gonna be throwback to early 2000s once you're mapping your car. Cyber physical. I know a lot of people, probably including myself, don't like using the term cyber, whether it's cyber attack or cyber physical, but I think we should all start using the same language. The government sector, the private sector, and a lot of automotive people are using the term cyber physical for computers that receive and send messages on the network and perform physical actions. We all need to talk the same language if we're going to work together to secure this stuff. We can't just keep nitpicking over terms. So I'm going to use the term cyber all the time. Hate me for it, whatever, I don't care.
I hate you for it. So we wrote this paper that we're going to release about this talk. It's like 100 pages, and I don't know if it says cyber physical, does it?
It does.
So for a very, very long time, the paper said ECUs that control physical things, like over and over and over, like 100 times in the paper. So I guess finally.
I changed them all. I changed them all to cyber physical because that's what everyone says. Wikipedia told me that. What are some cyber physical stuff? I have a new Infiniti Q50, sweet car, I love it. And it has things like distance control. So at any speed, really, you can hit this button, and you see I'm going to try to slam into the back of this bus here in Pittsburgh, and the car will beep and completely stop for me. There was no interaction. There was not me pressing the brake. It just has sensors on the front of the car that senses when you're coming close to something, it will audibly alert you, and if you don't react, it will actually brake for you.
So that means that there's a computer somewhere that can send a message. Well, presumably.
Yeah.
There's a computer that controls the brakes. Probably that computer isn't the brakes, so there's messages being sent from that computer to the brake saying stop.
Yeah, we can presume from previous experience that there's messages coming across that say brake.
And the Toyota Prius had that, and that's one of the videos last year of we would send that message and it would jam on the brakes.
Yeah.
So presumably you could do that in the Q50 as well.
And maybe someday we'll see, but I don't know.
And we're not really picking on the Q50, we just have one.
Yeah, we just have one.
We just want to show what sort of cyber physical features cars have. Because
For the record, if anyone from Nissan is here, I love the Q50. Thumbs up, great car. So it's not that I'm picking on it, it's a great car. The cool thing about the Q50 is that even something as primitive as lighting is now connected to the automotive network.
Even the
so the
headlamps
lights
are connected
actually
to the
will
vehicle's network.
turn
You'll see
with the
the
wheel,
headlamps
right? So
move
you
from
want
right to
to
left.
shine your lights around your corner as you're turning. Great feature. I'm turning the wheel here, and you can
back
kind of see the
again.
lights go back and forth.
this is cyber physical, but not cyber dangerous.
It could be if I turn the lights in your eyes.
Yeah. That's the threat there, the threat model.
Yeah, not too physical.
You might, hurt someone's eyes.
As you saw before, intelligent cruise control, a lot of cars are having these now.
This feature's awesome.
Yeah, I love this feature. You're on the highway, some jerk is going slow in the passing lane, your car creeps up on it, it will slow the car down. As you see here, I'm kind of set for 24 miles an hour. I'm going to try to rear end this car. The car won't, my car won't let me because it'll slow down. And when the traffic starts moving again, the car speeds up. So presumably...
So Chris never touches the brakes or the gas
Yeah.
here.
I'm just
Accelerator.
being real safe, driving with one hand, filming with the other. Public roads.
Yeah, just like the academics who did all their research with helmets on a test
Yeah,
track. We do that too, pretty much, sort of.
I want to apologize to the men and women in the Pittsburgh Police Department for being so dangerous. No, they're great features, and they make you safer. And you actually become accustomed to them. After driving my car for a while, I'm just shocked when I'll drive another car and it doesn't brake for me. It's stupid. Like this car's stupid. I hate you. Brake for me. Know when I need to stop. I want to go on Twitter the whole time. Active lane control, right? So this is the action of the car when it senses that it's going out of its lane because it has a camera that looks at the painting. And if it goes off, it beeps and turns you into center. Then it sees the dots and it'll move you back. So you can, the Q50 is amazing, man. You hit one button, it brakes for you, it accelerates for you, and it keeps you in your lane. You literally can just tweet and drive all you want.
Yep.
Not that I condone that.
So what this means, again, besides Chris getting to tweet for free, is that there's a computer that controls the steering, there's a computer that controls the acceleration, there's a computer that controls the braking, and probably these are computers that are not.
Yep.
The computer probably that has the sensor and the steering probably isn't the same one that does the steering. So they're going to have to communicate.
From our experience, we've seen the way these things work is the sensors send messages to a computer that sends a message across the network to another computer that actually controls the device.
In our sample size of 2 cars, that's what we've seen.
And that's why people need to buy us more cars. So if you're here and you're an automotive manufacturer, we'll give you our address. You just start shipping them in, and I'll drive them around.
And we will not talk about you at conferences.
Yeah, there you go.
That's the payment.
So all the people from Ferrari here, we all need 599 Californias. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So here is...
Play it.
Sure. So here is just the self-parking feature. This one is for my Jeep Cherokee. And you can watch that the computer, I'm not going to touch the steering wheel. The steering wheel just turns to help guide me into a parking spot. And you'll see that it's not just like one turn and that's it. It's like constantly sort of adapting and turning to, as it sees sensors telling it that I'm going to either hit something or not hit something or whatever. I'm in charge of the acceleration and the brakes. It's only doing the steering and the gears I'm doing as well. So, but it can, obviously now that it's just there's another computer somewhere telling the steering to turn. And there might be safety mechanisms built in, there might not be, we don't know.
Yeah.
But we found that in both our cars last time, there were some safety mechanisms built in. For the Prius, we were able to circumvent those. Not in the
Yeah, I mean, it has a servo mechanism that physically turns the wheel for you. So that's something, right? The computer's definitely controlling that.
Right. So if you're thinking about a car to hack, like I would rather start against a car with this than not with this,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, if you want to succeed, if you like failing, like pick something else, I guess. But I would try to go for the easiest target. There's a reason everyone writes Adobe O-Day, or at least used to, right? It was the easiest thing to do. Sorry,
so-
Adobe.
So here is my Jeep Cherokee again. Want to hit play? So here I'm going to show the collision prevention system
Okay,
again. If you're about to hit something,
out
it
the
beeps to warn you, and if you don't
collision
apply the brakes,
prevention
it applies the brakes
system
for
here.
you to stop you from getting in an accident. So I piled up
Do
all these
not touch the
boxes
brakes.
on this test track, and I'm just going to drive. I'm not going to touch the brakes no matter what I said. So here we go. You'll hear the car beep in a second. Oh. It didn't actually work for some reason. I don't know.
I'm glad mine worked because I'm going to smash into that box.
Right. So I'm not exactly sure why it didn't work, but it really works in real life. Like it goes off all the time, but it must know that it's boxes and not a car. But anyway, this is like sort of what makes it fun to hack cars instead of browsers. Like hacking browsers, you don't just get to smash into stuff. So
You don't get calc like, wah, wah.
Right.
If you don't get calc here, the boxes fly away.
Right. Anyway, so it was fun.
Yeah. So those are the fun things you get to do. I think we already talked about our goals. Really, we wanted to look at a broader scope of cars, and we wanted to see, how do they wirelessly communicate? How do they communicate with the outside world, I guess I should say. It's network architecture, and what features does it have for computers to physically control aspects of the automobile? This is our hackability. In no way, shape, or form does this mean that, we definitely can hack this car as opposed to this car. It just means that we think that these cars have legitimate attack surfaces, features that control the automobile, and a network topology that would be advantageous for us upon remote entry.
Right. It just means like 3 years ago when I was trying to figure out what browser to hack, and I picked Safari instead of Chrome. It's the same thing.
Yeah,
So like I
exactly.
didn't know I could hack Safari, although
Yeah.
I kind of knew. But what I knew was that it was going to be easier.
Yeah. And we have our, what I guess I'm calling our like lightweight consumer reports thing, right? I mean, you can pick up a mag and it'll tell you, here's the safety features of this car, here's our ratings, it has these things to keep you safe. Why can't we, as a security industry, start rating automobiles saying, hey, we think cars have good cybersecurity and these cars don't have good cybersecurity,
Right.
and rate them accordingly, and hopefully it promotes change within organizations.
Right. And like I said, we're releasing this paper hopefully today. I don't know.
Today, tomorrow, Friday.
Yeah, so, and it outlines exactly how we base the scores, what we found, and so we're not just like pulling stuff out of the
Yeah.
air. You can argue with us, and that's fine. We have data, and
Yeah, we
like,
spent a lot of time getting the data. This is maybe some of the most boring research we've ever done because it was basically all data and figuring out correlations and how things work, but I think we did a pretty thorough job. So yeah, when we release the paper, get it. It's 95 pages of fun. Read it to your kids at night. It's great.
yeah, we were complaining at breakfast today about how our talk's not technical and it's all boring, like network diagrams and stuff. And Dino, we were with Dino Dizovi, and he's like, yeah, that's actually considered a technical talk.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, really? I didn't know that.
I thought you had to have drop O data.
Yeah, I thought there had to be shellcode or
Yeah.
assembly or something, but anyway. So this is our non-technical, maybe technical for managers talk.
Yeah, exactly. We had a hard time with all this data because nothing's the same. So we bought mechanics accounts for all the automobiles we'll talk about, and a lot of them you can't just be like, I want your CAN diagram for this car.
Right.
Like,
basically, that's what we wanted mostly.
Yeah.
Was we want to know what features it has, where they live on the CAN bus, what's the diagram, and there's not a button to do that.
These sites are really designed for mechanics who want to diagnose problems. So the windshield wipers won't work, and they'll take you through steps on how to fix them. These are the things that these sites are built for. They're not built for two hacker dudes to try to do reconnaissance on each car and figure out their network topology and the wiring diagrams and all that stuff. So it took a while to try to normalize the data. If you do read the paper, while we will use kind of different terminology, we try to normalize all the data. So you'll see all the ECUs for a car, what given bus they're on, and my awesome diagramming skills that I use to recreate diagrams for each of the automobiles, which you'll see here in a moment.
Yeah. So there were a lot of times when, like, I can write shellcode and stuff, that's no problem. But like on these sites, I was like, Chris, I give up. I can't do it.
Yeah.
It's like this site is
what happened?
impossible.
I can't
No one
log
can
in.
use this site.
I can't log in. I'd be like, do you try Internet Explorer? Like, no. Like, try that. Try that.
I was like, I tried Internet Explorer 7. You think that's good? No, try 6.
Try 6. The internet's hard, so let's go shopping. This is basically describes our problems. We try to search for things like CAN bus. I figure that should come up. Like, you use CAN on your car, you should search, 0 results. A lot of them looked like they were just kind of haphazardly made. Like, you won't get search results, but then it's like, oh, you log in, you'll get search results. It's not intuitive, at least to us. Lots of 404s, lots of websites not working for days at a time. Just attention. It was just hard to do because everything's so different, and there was no kind of direct way to go about it.
This last picture I got from the BMW site, I was trying to remember, there was this one that was really bad. There was like a thing that says like diagrams. I clicked on that. It says wiring diagrams. I clicked on that. It was like none.
I had to tell you what to do. I was
Yeah.
like, no, it's not wire diagrams. It's actually in body control mechanisms, physical mechanisms, wiring, physical
No,
wiring.
the only way you could find it is by searching for it.
Oh, yeah.
You had to go to search.
Like,
and
there
search
was no way to get it from the UI. You had to know the search term to find the diagram.
So anyway, I was trying to do that, and I ended up on the BMW site trying to find that, and it wasn't the right site. And I just left it open for a while, and I came back, and this error message showed up. It was like, I didn't even try to get that. I was trying to get an error message, and then this one, I just
And that's
got
why
for free.
Charlie called me and was like, I give up. I was like, all right,
I hate
let's
car
not even
hacking.
do this talk. Sucks. Now, the moment everyone's not been waiting for. Our remote survey. So we wanted to make it really simple to understand. So we came up with our little legend here, and you'll see it's pretty self-explanatory. You have icons for things like brakes, steering, internet, radio, tire pressure monitoring. We basically want people to be able to look at these diagrams and make a off-the-cuff diagnosis of their thoughts on the architecture and how they think they would try to attack this vehicle. Up first, the Audi A8. This is one of the first ones I did because it starts with A. I know, pretty technical. This is how I thought most of them would be, right? You have a thing called a most ring, which is like fiber optics, and that's where all the kind of internet connectivity stuff is. And then you have a drivetrain where you have like steering, braking, acceleration, and then you have a different CAN network for unlocking the doors and tire pressure monitors, and they're all kind of separated from this central kind of gateway type mechanism. And I'm sure it passes messages back and forth, and you may be able to send them right away, but generally speaking, things are apart.
Segmented.
Yeah, segmented, thank you. I will have to remember that word.
So this is like if I was designing a car network, it would look something like this.
Yeah, anyone from Audi here?
You suck, Audi.
All right, good job.
So what this says is that if you attack, say, the Bluetooth stack, and you want to send messages to the brakes, your messages are going to have to go through this.
Diagnostic connector interface J533.
So maybe that just passes the messages. Maybe it blocks all messages.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know, but there's going to be a hurdle to get by
Yeah,
that you might not have thought was going to be
if
there.
you pop, the radio unit, it doesn't look like there's any direct messaging to say braking, where you'll see in other vehicles that tends to be the case.
Right, and just to talk a little bit about how gateways work, in the academics research, there was a gateway on their car. It was what was it, 2010 or 9?
2010 Chevy Malibu?
Yes, they had a 2010 Chevy Malibu. So there was like a network that was not privileged, and then there was one that had like brakes and steering and stuff. And it was possible, you couldn't send messages across that, gateway, but it turned out you could reprogram the gateway from the less privileged side to the more privileged side. So they were able to bypass that gateway.
So there's a lot of considerations, right? I mean, they're designing these vehicles to work properly, and the security considerations are hard to think about, and probably a lot of times hard to do, because I'm sure it's pushing a boulder uphill when designing the architecture of an automobile.
Right.
So it's not easy work.
So and another comparison, on the Ford Escape, the one I looked at, the 2010, it again had two main sort of networks. And you weren't supposed to be able to go from the lower, in the gateway, I watched the messages. It doesn't just pass stuff. It passes a few messages, but it rewrites them in a totally different way. So you couldn't just have it pass for you.
Now, you may be able to figure out the way it rewrites them, but...
Yeah, but it's still probably not going to be exactly what you want.
Yeah.
And then you couldn't reprogram, it was designed not to be reprogrammable from the least privileged side.
Yeah.
So it was well designed. If you ended up, and I think I have a diagram of this, if you end up attacking the tire pressure sensors, you'll end up on the least privileged side, and you will not be able to pass messages, at least I don't know how, to the say, brakes.
Everyone designs their things differently.
So the gateway can be an effective countermeasure to these sort of 3 steps of attacks. But it might not be, we don't know.
Yeah, and as we mentioned in the paper too, if it is the kind of sole piece of equipment in the car that's preventing you from your attack, it might become the target of the attack in general, right?
It'll become the IE sandbox or whatever.
Exactly.
Like, no one, everyone looks at that now.
The Honda Accord, right? You had a navigation unit that's on 2 CAN networks, and if you pop it, then you can talk to both CAN networks. The thing with the Honda Accord, it didn't have as many cyber physical features as other cars, right? So it didn't park itself. I think it did adaptive cruise control. So while this one, like, I don't know, smells hackable, it doesn't have a lot of features, so you may not be able to physically control much of the vehicle if you were to remotely pop it. The Infiniti Q50, this car I have, it's a brilliant car. But as you see from the diagram, a lot of things are on the same CAN network as the external facing items. So, basically the head unit that has all the Bluetooth and telematics and all that stuff is on a single CAN bus. So if you could get in remotely, you could potentially do stuff.
Well, you could talk to the engine, but you can't talk to the brakes or the steering.
Yeah, or you may be able to. We had it through the gateway. But yeah, it just ends up being...
There's at least a potential obstacle to talking
yeah,
to the
there's an
brakes.
obstacle to brakes and steering. There may not be an obstacle to anything involving the engine as well, right? The cool thing we did is try to look back. The G37 preceded the Q50. It basically had a flat CAN network. And you see everything's kind of on the same thing. But it didn't have a lot of cyber physical features, right? I think it had adaptive cruise control, but not much else. So you see the progression over time, right? Just in 4 years, they went from this kind of flat CAN bus to this very complex system of multiple CAN buses and communication gateways. It's good because it's segmented, but at the same time, you've added a lot of complexity. And usually, we found that when you add a lot of complexity to things, there tend to be errors.
This is my favorite diagram. The big rectangle.
This is the favorite diagram to create because it took 3 seconds. The 2006 G35, which preceded the G37. Again, flat CAN network. Again, not much in it. So if you're rocking a 2006 G35, there's not much attack surface for you.
There's not even Bluetooth, so.
Yeah, it doesn't have much of anything, right? So.
But that doesn't mean I want to drive a crappy 2006
I want a car that brakes and accelerates and steers itself because it makes driving that much better.
Right.
So.
Hey, it's my Jeep.
Hey, it's your Jeep.
Yeah, so I have this car. It has, you'll notice, like a lot of the remote functionality takes place in the radio, which is on both CAN buses. All the wheels, like the steering wheel and the brakes and stuff, are on this thing called CAN-C. So basically this one, even though it's not a flat network, essentially from a remote attack perspective, it is. Because any of the remote endpoints you attack can send messages without anything in between to the brakes and the steering. So this is why I bought this car, actually. And we do the opposite of what the Consumer Reports people say.
Exactly.
Like, we find the most unsafe car, and that's the one I'm buying. Because I want to hack it.
Just like I browse with IE6, I want the most hackable car.
All right, so here is another car by the same manufacturer. So Dodge Ram this time. So if you notice, these two diagrams are essentially identical. It's essentially from a remote attacker's perspective, it's a flat network, even though the actual network itself is.
But it doesn't have, the Ram basically just burns a lot of gas. It doesn't have a lot of cyber physical features, right? It doesn't
Right.
park itself.
Right.
It doesn't do a lot
Apparently,
of
the
that
people who like to buy gigantic trucks don't like.
stuff. Don't feel the need to have a computer parked for it.
Yeah.
For them.
Although I couldn't park that car, so I would
Yeah.
want a computer to do that. All right, so Chrysler 300, again, it's another Chrysler vehicle. You notice, though, that the network diagram is very different, right? So now it's not a flat network anymore. All the things that have, well, not all the things, but most of the interesting remote endpoints are on a different CAN network than the cyber physical ECUs. And so if you would think like, hey, it's a Chrysler, like, does it matter if I buy a Jeep or a Chrysler 300 if I want to attack it? You might think it doesn't matter, but it actually does.
Yeah.
The main difference here is that the radio is not on both networks. It's only on one network.
Yeah. So it's just
who
neat
knows?
to see, right? So same manufacturers, basically the same parent company designed both these cars, but they're kind of vastly different, which is we didn't know before we started doing all the data stuff.
Right. The Dodge Viper, which I wanted to buy. but-
Somehow couldn't get budget for a Viper.
I know. Rip off. So this basically has the same exact network as the previous car. So again, if you're a remote attacker, for the most part, you're going to have to pass through some sort of gateway if you want to send messages from, say, Bluetooth to the brakes.
And this thing doesn't have almost any cyber physical features. It's
No.
made to go fast and not park itself and not keep itself in the lane.
Right. They assume if you know what you're doing.
Yeah,
if drive that
you
car.
know what's up. So the Escalade, is a Cadillac GM car. As you see here,
This
again,
is probably Obama's car.
this might be Obama's car. Put me on a list. Not flying home.
Yep. We're going to get the extra pat down for sure.
So you see here, though, right? You have this TCIM module, like radio communications module. It sits on both the low-speed bus and the high-speed bus. Again, that's where all the interesting stuff is. So from a remote perspective, right, you just pop something and you're on the two main CAN buses of the car, which means you can send messages on both. This seems to be common through a lot of cars we see in here. Just generally, the radio houses everything cool, and they want it connected to both, either for diagnostic or, it needs the speed or things like that.
We're going to speed this up.
I know.
All right, so here's an old Ford. It has a certain network. You can see it. So it doesn't have any cool features, either remote or cyber feature or cyber physical. It sucks. All right, now this is basically that same car today. You can see it's got a pretty big network with lots of different things. The interesting thing is the cyber physical things are all off by themselves. The remote endpoints are kind of all over the place. But the point is, in the 3-stage attack, stage 2 might be difficult.
And you see that the cars have just increased in complexity over time.
All right, we'll fly through these BMWs. They're all
Yeah.
basically the same. Again, you have the cyber physical ECUs off on their own little network and all the other remote endpoints on a different one. So again, this is one that's going to take 2 steps.
Yeah.
Or the second step is going to be difficult.
Even the crazy concept BMW as well. Range Rover, again, similar to kind of other very segmented automobiles, right? You have all the communications on kind of one bus. They all kind of communicate through a gateway, cyber physical features on different aspects of the automobile. This seems typical within some manufacturers and atypical in others. We don't work at car companies, so we can't tell you why.
So check out our paper, has all this data in it. You
Yeah.
can check it out. But I mean, the point to kind of take away from this is that some cars, like the remote things, are on the same network as the cyber physical parts, and some cars are not. And that makes a big difference if you're going to be an attacker.
It's a lot easier to read the paper because we list the ECUs. There are features that we don't list with little icons because we couldn't fit them all in there. You see things like the Prius, between 4 years, it's never changed. I think we're all familiar with the 2010 Prius, at least I am intimately. And at one point they changed it all, right? So a 2006 Prius had this bean network and AV LAN and CAN bus. And at one point there was a redesign. And I assume these redesigns are painful and very expensive, hence why they don't happen all that often.
I also assume they have nothing to do with security.
I'm sure they don't. It's probably all functionality. What's our analysis of all this stuff?
Car hacking is hard.
Car hacking's hard. Let's go shopping.
Yeah. So anyway, this is just a picture of the Jeep. It's CAN network from, I don't remember exactly when, 2010, I think, and 2014. So you can see way more ECUs as time goes on, way more complexity of the network.
As we talked before, same manufacturer, different design, right? These we don't know why, but parent companies will design different brands of cars differently. So what is it? It's Mo technology, Mo problems. That's the way it seems right now, right? You're adding stuff, you're adding internet to these cars, and it's increasing complexity, and that's more code, which means probably more mistakes. So that's how we came up with our hackability stuff.
You guys leave and are gonna really regret
they're
it.
missing out.
Their
Oh,
friends
damn,
are
we're dropping at the end.
Their friends are gonna be like, dude, you should have stayed.
Oh,
It
you
was
should see that
awesome."
O-Day, it was so great, man. Oh, I know, I left. In-car apps, I think that's one thing that like we all need to get pretty keen on because everyone knows how to go about exploiting these things, browsers, apps, stuff like that. Regional similarities, if you read the paper, you'll see it seems like German cars are made like German cars, Japanese cars are made like Japanese cars, American cars are made like American cars, Brit cars are made like Brit cars. So I don't know if it's engineering overlap from people quitting and joining different companies or whatever, but it seems like they have the same mentalities. I get it, right? Some companies want low-end torque, some companies want high-end torque in their vehicles. It's probably just the way they think. One of the biggest takeaway is the patching problem. We've kind of solved this in software, right? Windows Update rules. It puts updates and reboots your computer. Patching for cars, really hard. Right now is what they do is they send you a letter in the mail if they know your address, and you have to take it somewhere. Generally speaking, most people don't have over the air. So what happens when someone releases a Bluetooth exploit for a fleet of cars? It's going to be...
That's never happened,
Yeah.
but someday it's going
What if
to.
it happened?
What if me and Chris did that?
What if Charlie and I really... Yeah.
We're
No.
not going to do that today, just so you know.
It's costly. It costs them a lot to send these letters out and figure out what they need to do. It costs a lot for people to bring it into the dealership and get a software update. So it's going to be very hard if a real live exploit comes out to make sure that everyone who is vulnerable gets fixed. So I don't even know what to do with this problem. I'm just glad I'm not
I think
in
you got
charge
to do
of it.
over-the-air updates. That's the solution.
Yeah, OTA.
Which sounds crazy. It's like, oh my God, you can remotely do things.
I'd
but like,
I'd rather have them remotely
dude,
update
when I
my
find
car.
out your browser exploiting for your car, you're going to wish you had
Yeah,
that.
exactly. So what can you do to protect cars, right? A lot of the focus right now, I think, is securing remote endpoints. Great, awesome. But we can't write perfect code. Powerhouses like Microsoft, Google spend a bunch of money, and every month there's browser bugs. It's hard. You can't rely just on saying, I'm going to write completely 100% secure software. It doesn't exist. Canned message injection. Again, this is how we control the car. Can you make it so pieces of the car that don't need to communicate with the vehicle cannot communicate with it?
Right.
Your Bluetooth stack probably doesn't need to write canned messages, right? So that maybe think about figuring out ways to...
You want to make each of these 3 steps hard for a remote attacker.
Exactly.
Not just worry about having no bugs, because we don't know how to do that. But what we can do is engineer stuff. So we can make it to where maybe this ECU has a second, board on it that only it can send. It doesn't. It sends cam messages and it filters them, and there's lots of things you can do. But I don't think anyone's doing it.
You got to make it harder, right? I mean, that's what software did, and we think automobile should be the same way. A lot of people mention cryptography. If you pop it remotely, you already own the ECU, which means you own the keys. Big key problem. We've seen with security access.
Right.
We think this is a losing battle.
So this is something a lot of people come up to us and say they think cryptography will
Yeah.
solve it, but we don't think cryptography solves this problem. But if you want to do it,
Have at it, man.
right, if it makes it a little harder, then
Sure.
cool.
We've seen network segregation. We think this makes a big difference. It's not a cure-all, but it does make things harder for an
I
attacker.
mean, the problem is we want, like, have you ever driven and your radio gets louder when you're driving faster? I mean, that's because we need to send messages from, like, the engine to the radio.
Yeah.
So, like, you can't completely segment your things that are remote, but what you can do is at least segment them somewhat.
Yeah, exactly.
Have something in between, right?
We think there's one part of this that is missing, that has been around in software for a long time, and that's detection and prevention. We submit to you, which we didn't have a fancy name for, the Can No Hackalator 3000.
I actually didn't even get a say in that name.
No, you didn't.
It just showed up in the slides one day, and I was like,
I had
okay.
a test group, and that really
liked it?
resonated with them.
Okay, cool. So IDS systems suck. Like, I hate them. But it turns out they work in cars. Because cars are simple, and the
Yeah.
internet is not simple.
HTML and JavaScript can mess with things, and nothing looks alike. But on cars, on CAN at least, it's going to be 0 to 8 bytes in length. right? While you may not know exactly what the state is, you know what messages are going to be like, and you're going to know how often you see them. And if you see one out of the norm, it sticks out like a sore thumb.
Right. So like people come to us when we have this idea, and they're like, oh well, they catch your attack or your attacks, but what about an attacker who like obfuscates their attack?
Yeah,
it's like
you can't.
You can't
You
obfuscate your
either
attack.
attack it and you inject messages, or you don't.
Right. And like you either tell the brakes to turn
off,
on, or you don't.
Or you
right?
don't, or
Like,
you don't send any messages.
Right. You
So-
can't like,
Yeah.
put some sort of like
It's not like
decoding-
messing up JavaScript to, screw up a regex. It's not the way it works. This is the thing that we have. It's a board,
I dare you to remember what it's called.
the embed.
No,
What?
the title for this stupid device that you made up.
Oh, can Hackalator 3000. Can no Hackalator 3000.
See, he doesn't even know the name.
We'll change it. Basically, we put it on a board, but it's not the board. It's the algorithms. It's our learning process and detection. You can put this on a board. You can put it in an existing ECU. You can make a new ECU that sits under the hood of the car. It's not the board. We only put it on a board because it looks neat.
Right. So, and since we're not car manufacturers, we just plug in the OBD2, and here it is in practice.
So this is the braking attack that we did before.
This is the one that makes your brakes not work. So I'm driving around. I don't remember exactly what happens. Oh, so now the brakes are not working. I'm driving on my test track, and at any moment, I would run into something.
There's just people dying everywhere.
You can imagine that happening. So now I'm going to turn on the thing.
Can no Hackalator 3000.
Yeah, so it says it's learning. So right now it's looking at all the traffic. It's not designed for my car for any sort of attacks. It's just in general. It looks at traffic for a while, figures out what messages are sent, at what rate, and then it's ready to detect. So now I'm going to launch the same attack again, the one that makes the brakes not work, and the attack you'll see fails, and my brakes still work.
Steering works.
So and what we do is, so there's the second question, which is, say you detect something, then what do you do? And what we chose to do, you could do lots of stuff. You could put a warning to the driver, check engine light come on, I don't know. But what we chose to do is just short out the CAN bus. So no CAN communication.
Yeah.
Your car still works, but all the fancy features don't work anymore.
So basically, you can pull this thing to the side of the road or whatever. The nice thing to see, though, is you saw the learning time was a couple seconds, and it didn't need to know anything about the car it was on. It just needed to know that it was plugged in, listen how the car normally communicates, and then once it's learned how the car communicates, if anything strays from that baseline, we consider it bad. We opted to kill the CAN bus. You could put a skull and crossbones on the infotainment or something like that,
Jack
whatever you
up
want
the
to
back.
do. Yeah.
So, I mean, the thing is, if everyone had this device, you could get remotely attacked, but they're not going to be all crashy. That's fine.
Yeah.
I can live with that. If
Same.
you want to know what I'm listening to on the radio, peace, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
But you're not going to have my steering wheel jack me into the
Yeah,
trees.
I'd much rather have my car be hard to steer and pull over than wreck into the berm like we did to the Fox News guy.
Right. All right, that's it. Thanks. Oh, wait.
Oh.
There's one more thing. Oh, I just did a Steve Jobs.
They are
Yeah.
gonna be pissed.
Okay, anyway. Steve Jobs, I love you. All right, so this talk pretty much sucked, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
It's pretty bad. I mean, it's like data and boring stuff. So I was like, we need to have some bugs and exploits and stuff, right? So here's 2 ways you can jailbreak your Jeep or Chrysler or Dodge or Ram or Fiat or whatever an SRT is. It's a car, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Sure.
so let me tell you how you can jailbreak your cars. It's pretty fun. It's not a remote exploit, I know, but it's still cool. Hey, wait a second, man.
Oops, sorry.
Come on, why are you
I
taking
was trying
over
to
my
help.
talk?
I hurt instead of
Yes,
help.
you hurt. So let me tell you how upgrades happen on a Jeep, because that's important. So you download something from the Jeep website, you stick it on a USB stick, you plug it into your car, and you turn on your car. On the USB stick is an ISO. There's a single ISO file. You can mount that ISO file, check it out. It's signed. So if you mess with it, it doesn't work. Which is, good, I guess, if you're not trying to jailbreak your Jeep.
Sure.
So I had this idea. I was like, well, I'll show you what happens. So when you go to update it, you stick it in and it grinds for a while, and then it says
Press play.
no, not yet. So then it says it checks it, and it either says invalid or it says it's okay. Now press it. So here it is, it says it's okay, and I was like, I know. Now that it's checked it, I'm gonna pull it out, and I'm gonna swap in something that's not okay, but it's totally new, right? So it stopped the update process when I pulled out the USB stick. Damn it.
Jerks.
So this is like time of use versus time of check kind of thing.
Yep.
So I was like, damn it, they have won the battle. But I did not give up. So I noticed that, so here it's the same thing. This time I'm gonna say yes. I'm not gonna pull it out yet, but I'm gonna get my hand there ready for a very sly timing attack. You have to be very precise. So what happens is when it goes to reboot, when it goes to update, it sets some flags. It says it's going to be in like update mode, and it restarts. The thing is, right when it restarts, just yank it out, and then it's screwed.
That's hacking right there. You see that?
That is hacking on TV as you see it. So the thing is totally screwed because it needs to update because it set all these internal things, but it doesn't have any media to update from. And so if you look, after a while, the screen says like, please insert the USB stick. So I'm like, okay, I'll insert a USB stick. It's not the same one I was using before, but it's a USB stick. You didn't say that. So anyway, at this point, you can stick in any old USB stick with any old ISO, and it'll load from it. And the really hilarious thing, now you can actually see where it says, please insert USB stick. So the really hilarious thing is that it does do a check again of the ISO, but this time it's doing, the software running the check is from the ISO itself, so you can obviously turn off that check. Anyway, so method number 2, this one's even better. So you have the ISO, you can look at the actual software that's on your Jeep for the most part. And there's this one particular Lua code that will do the update process. So here's how it does your checksum. So it checks out your ISO file, and the first thing it does before it does all the SHA-1 hashing or whatever it does, is it opens up your ISO file. It goes 128 bytes in, which is like past the hash, and it reads 1 byte. If that 1 byte happens to be the capital ASCII letter S, it just skips all the authentication. And so here we go. Here is an ISO file that is perfectly acceptable to any of those Chrysler vehicles if you want to jailbreak your car. And sadly, the way I found this was I downloaded tons of different update files, and I started diffing them, and this was in one of the diffs. I was like, that sounds interesting. Like, the comment says check ISO integrity check. So anyway, that's bad. So then what can you do when you jailbreak it? Well, you can start to do cool stuff like you can change the root password and SSH in. You have to change root password, start SSH. They have SSH, but it's not running. And then you can SSH in. And you get this super scary warning that says like, warning, you are accessing a secure system. I was like, this is just like war games, man. I'm like,
talking to me.
I'm hacking the Whopper. Except I think the Whopper didn't have any misspellings. Do you see the misspelling?
The mischief is spelled incorrectly.
Mischief. I was like, come on. And then you can also, if you're jailbreaking, instead of just SSHing, which is pretty lame, like you can do this. So now when you start your car, you get to see our 2 handsome mugs.
Awesome. Well, that actually is it now. You've heard before. We went over what we thought about these cars. I think people need to do more architecture review, look at different cars. More people on this job, the better. New cars have new ECUs. Technology comes, and we see more exploits. If you want to contact us, Twitter, email. Thanks, everyone, for coming. I appreciate you.
Thanks a lot.